Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third episode of the Ripples of History podcast, and today we're joined by my friend Danny.
Good morning all, or good afternoon or evening, depending on when you're watching this.
And where your geographic location is.
Yeah.
So, Danny, for the sake of the audience, would you like to give us a rundown of what has happened?
Alright, a quick recap. We've had Henry VI of the House of Lancaster. He lost his throne to Edward IV, who was far better and sexier, and younger, and sexier, and sexier.
And hot, one might add.
Yeah, that is true. Also, he doesn't have comas. But, you know, these are the minor advantages of Edward IV. Edward comes in, he makes some poor marital decisions, and then everyone, one of his brothers, George, and the Earl of Warwick, decide they no longer like Edward, they rebel, they put Henry VI back, and that's where we are now.
So, things aren't going great for Edward?
No.
No.
Everything's been undone. He's lost his throne. But, he made some good decisions, such as marrying his sister Margaret to the Duke of Burgundy, Charles, because that's now where he is. He's in Burgundy with his brother-in-law, and Burgundy, very rich. The entirety of the Low Countries and bits of France. So,
and you know what marriages bring?
Yeah.
Yeah, alliances.
Yeah. And so he's sort of, Charles is willing to, support Edward since he's married to his sister. And also Burgundy and France don't get on. And the Lancastrian readaptation has been backed by France. So Burgundy sort of has to back.
Yeah, they don't really have much choice, do they?
It's like, right, well, we've just got to do this.
Yeah.
At the same time, the new Lancastrian regime, still under Henry VI, has massive problems in that it now has to try and please everyone. And it's formed of Henry's original allies and those who rebelled against Henry and made enemies with Henry and his allies to then just go back to them. So you've got Warwick, of course, Chief Yorkist, originally.
The big bad.
Yeah, the Duke of Somerset hates him, and has done for a while, over quarrels about inheritance and Calais and such things. Richard of Warwick hates the Queen hates Warwick. It's not an alliance that's set for fun.
No, it's definitely one of expediency.
Yeah, and at the same time, George, Duke of Clarence, Edward's brother, was sort of hoping to be king, but he's not king and he's not next in line to the throne.
No.
So he's not really got much going. He's not really got much out of this.
No, not at all.
No, other than the promise he might be made Duke of York, but he'd rather be king.
Yeah, why would you settle for the base of the mountain when you could go for the summit?
Exactly, yeah. But Edward and George's other brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, he's with Edward in Burgundy now, a man of just about to turn 18, and he's going to start getting some nice experience in war.
Ooh.
Yeah. As every man should.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in March 1471, about 6 months after being kicked out of England, Edward returns with an army of Burgundians. So there's a fairly quick turnaround.
Yeah, only 6 months.
He's not wasting time.
No, he's straight on it.
It took the Lancastrians 9 years. Ed's done it in 6 months.
Well, I don't know where this war is turning, but it's impossible to know.
Yes. And at first, when he lands, he lands in Hull, and Hull at first blocks him off because they don't want to get involved in more treason. But he does a claim. He says, "I'm not coming for the throne. I'm only here because I want to reclaim my title as Duke of York," which is undisputably rightfully Edward's. No matter what you think of the succession of the crown, he is the Duke of York by all rights. That's just a fact.
That is a fact. 100% indisputable.
Yes.
Yeah.
You cannot deny he is the Duke of York. No matter what Clarence thinks. Bastard.
Idiot.
Yeah. No, it's a trick that's been used before, because if you go back to 1399, under the twilight days of Richard II, he was a bit of a nutter, as kings go, a tyrant, we might say, and he exiled Henry of Bolingbroke, Duke of Lancaster. He was the wealthiest man in England, was Henry. And then he returned to England in 1399 and said, I'm only here to be Duke of Lancaster. We can be friends. And then he deposed Richard II.
Right, so there is a very clear precedent here.
Yeah, I mean, Henry VI's granddad took the throne by usurping the last king, and that was part of the Yorkist claim. They said they were the descendants of who should have been Richard II's heir, the Mortimers.
Right.
But that's another thing. We're not talking about succession structure. There's a precedent for coming in and saying, I only want my ducal title, and then going crazy and taking the throne.
Plausible deniability.
Yeah, because that's what it gives his supporters. Because if they just go in saying, yes, King Edward, and then it fails, they're going to die.
Yep, treason.
They'll be executed. But if they join up just because they can claim they still thought he was going to be the Duke, and they can say, yeah, well, he is the Duke of York. It's not unfair to want him as the Duke of York.
Exactly, we're just here to get what's rightfully his.
Yeah, I mean, no one would believe them.
No,
but, technically speaking, there's no evidence
against
it.
That is true.
So they're just And then once he says he's coming to be York, the Duke of York, he starts getting a few more men to his side, including a man called William Parr, who in this story generally isn't that important. But his granddaughter might
recognise that surname.
Yeah, his granddaughter and Edward's grandson, they may meet again.
That's par for the course, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite impressive. He was just a knight. But then, but then,
Well, that is the ripple of history, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Edward IV married a knight's daughter. Why can't his grandson?
Exactly.
And he married a few other people as well. I don't know who I'm talking about. Guess who Edward IV's grandson is? Anyone you can think of around the early 1500s who's known for marrying several women? Ideally high up in England's government?
Well, I do think he likes a number 8. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah. Well, that's a tale for another day.
Exactly.
But for now, William Parr and James Harrington are the first to join Edward, the Duke of York. I'm doing speech marks for those who can't see. Everyone.
Thanks for the narration, Danny.
The Duke of York, nudge nudge wink wink, they bring with them 600 men, and they also work for George, Duke of Clarence, who again defects to his brother and brings with him, he's realised he's not going to become king through the Lancastrians.
Yeah.
He's got a vaguely better chance of doing okay for himself under Edward. Well, at this point, he doesn't have a son, and George, as the older younger brother, is Edward's successor until he has a son, which is coming soon. Very soon.
Very soon.
As in 1471. But even, Prince of Wales, yeah.
From George's perspective, it makes a lot more sense to side with your brother, who has a very clear claim to the throne.
Yeah.
Who also managed to get a massive army in about 6 months, whereas your own
enemies
now took almost a decade to do so.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite clear where you'd want to place your bets.
Yeah. I mean, again, also just, it's your brother. Richard of Gloucester is being loyal. He's being such a good brother. Yeah, for now. Yeah. But anyway, George brings over a good 3,000 men to bolster the army. And then battles start.
Battles begin.
Yeah, there's 2 big ones this time round. You've got the Battle of Barnet in April 1471. The Earl of Warwick dies fighting for the Lancastrians.
Warwick gone?
Yeah, as a consequence, that means George is now rightfully the Earl of Warwick.
Oh, he's stepping up.
Yes, Yeah, Warwick's gone now. He never defected again. And then we keep moving. We go further west to Tewkesbury in May 1471, and the Lancastrian heir, Edward of Westminster, is killed as well.
Oh, that's him gone as well.
Yeah, they're dropping like flies.
Yeah.
And so at that point, after his death, the Lancastrian cause is a 50-year-old mentally ill man.
Right, that's brilliant for them.
It's not the most awe-inspiring sight. So needless to say, Henry VI loses the throne again. Needless to say, he doesn't live much longer either. The official reports say he pulled a Padme and died of sadness and melancholy. I don't know, he was in the Tower of London. and it's got a reputation
for not having the highest mortality rate.
Yeah, when you put royals in there, they tend to disappear.
They don't tend to come out.
No.
Oh.
No.
Poor Henry VI.
You gotta feel a bit bad for him.
Yeah. Oh well.
But Edward IV is back.
Yippee!
He's on the throne again, and he just had a son as well. I can't remember his birthday. Sometime in 1471, he has a son, Edward, of course.
Of course. Well, there's no other name in existence you could pick but Edward.
Yeah, very true, very true. Both his brothers are back on side. Clarence has joined them again. Gloucester is just loyal, a good younger brother. Everything's looking good. And for the next few years, there's no significant threat to Edward's reign. There's a couple of minor Lancastrian rebellions, but it's not much.
No.
Like the Earl of Oxford captures an island off the coast of Cornwall. But as I say, with Henry VI dead, with Edward of Westminster dead, who is the Lancastrian champion, they don't have much of a cause.
No.
The closest thing they have, by 1471, a 14-year-old boy called Henry Tudor.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Who is the son of Henry VI's half-brother Edmund Tudor, Earl of Richmond, and Margaret Beaufort, the daughter of one of the Dukes of Somerset, who is one of the wealthiest and smartest women of the day. So there's they've got Henry Tudor has a very weird claim to the throne because the Beaufort family were the descendants of John of Gaunt, like the House of Lancaster were, but through his third wife, who the children with her were illegitimate, but then he married her, and then they got legitimised. So it's like a legal grey area,
right,
where you're not really sure.
Yeah.
It's like, you were a bastard, but now you're not.
So you technically have a claim, and it's not like the Lancasters are really in much of a position to kind of find anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, they could, his uncle, Jasper Tudor, Henry VI's other half-brother, Edmund's brother, doesn't have any actual royal English blood. Like, they've got more French royal blood than English royal blood. A fun fact. Yeah. But they realise he's the closest thing they have. Tenuous as it is, that is their best bet. And Jasper Tudor realises this and flees with Henry and takes him to Brittany in France. They just sort of chill there for ages. They don't do much. Henry has a bastard son of his own called Roland with an unknown Breton lady.
Oh.
Side detail. Doesn't really matter.
Is he relevant ever?
I mean, he eventually becomes a knight and lives, a reasonable career
fair enough
in Wales, but it's just a fun little aside.
Yeah. Random bastard.
Yeah. Roland.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Good
for the lad.
Yeah. Go on. We'll see why he gets this opportunity soon.
Yeah.
So as I say, Edward has a pretty chill second reign. He does a few, classic English king activities. He invades France.
As you do.
In 1475.
Obviously.
Yeah.
What else is he going to do with this time?
Yeah, I mean, he could have done more with it, but then King Louis just said, "I'll give you a lot of money if you leave me alone." And it was a lot of money. It was
lot of money?
Yeah, a lot.
Well,
it was big bank.
He was making mad stacks.
It was a lot of money every year.
Every year? So it wasn't just like a lump sum?
No, he was sending him an annual pension.
Oh my god.
So Edward IV, he never had to raise taxes on England again because of this.
You know what? Fair play.
Yeah.
Why raise taxes on your own subjects when you can basically
get
export
the French to pay for it?
France? Yeah, just get the French to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, the English weren't particularly happy about it because they wanted to conquer France, not just get paid by France, but
Yeah, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, it was still a good deal, really. And then a bit later, he does the other classic English king pastime and invades Scotland with the hope of overthrowing James III and putting James's brother, the Duke of Albany, on the throne. It doesn't, he puts Richard of Gloucester in charge, and he does a pretty solid job of, getting to Edinburgh really quickly and seizing power. But the problem is Scotland does not like England. So when they put the Duke of Albany in power, it doesn't last very long because the other Scottish people think, we don't want the English-backed guy, we want James. So it all sort of falls apart, but it was militarily a good success. They got up to Edinburgh very quickly, and it was, a very good attempt from Gloucester. Other side story that happened, George keeps getting up to tricks and hijinks, and eventually has to die.
Oh no, George!
No,
George!
No, even though he'd, returned to the Yorkists, he didn't really stay there for long. He eventually accused Queen Elizabeth of being a witch, and then decided that someone had poisoned his wife, and murdered a woman who he thought had poisoned his wife, when she probably just died of giving birth.
What a smart guy.
Yeah, so eventually Edward had to step in and be like, you're my brother, I don't want to kill you, but you are also doing crimes and treason, and the punishment is death. He's got a quandary, and he solves it by saying, I'll execute you in a way you want. You get to pick.
How gracious of him.
So kind. So kind. But I think George picks the right way because he chooses to be drowned to death in a barrel of his favourite wine.
Valid. Yeah. Completely valid.
And it's probably
a brilliant way to go out.
Yeah, there's not much better.
No.
There's far worse ways back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got, by 1483, we've got George, Duke of Clarence is dead. His family is attainted, which means his son, another Edward, is...
They're out of the picture then.
They're sort of. His son Edward is now the Earl of Warwick, because Warwick came through the mother, Isabel Neville, Warwick's daughter. She wasn't attainted, so Edward still gets to be the Earl of Warwick, and he gets all of the Neville inheritance. He just gets nothing inherited from George.
Right.
Which means he can't inherit George's claim to the throne.
Well, that is a problem for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you look at 1483, you'd think not, because, you got Edward IV, and 40-year-old guy. He's got two sons.
Yeah.
Prince Edward and Richard, the new Duke of York. You wouldn't have thought it's a problem. But then, just before his 41st birthday, Edward IV dies.
Oh, no! The Hot Prince!
He's gone. Yeah.
Or what used to be the Hot Prince.
He wasn't hot anymore. He drank and ate a lot. He died of a comfortable life.
Oh. Well, I mean, I guess if there was a way he was going to go out, it'd be from a comfortable life.
Yeah, I presume it's too much beer.
Yeah.
And meat, but that's not a problem that's going to... I'm built different.
He's built different until he wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway, Edward IV is gone now. And if you do the maths, 1483, the Prince Edward was born in 1471. He's a 12-year-old boy as the King Edward V. And as a child, he's going to need a regent. Now, according to Edward IV's will, he wanted Gloucester to be Lord Protector until Edward V turned 18. However, there's factions at court.
Oh no.
Yeah. The Prince of Wales, now Edward V, is being raised by his mother's brother, Anthony, Earl Rivers, and various other Woodville people. The Woodvilles, on the whole, do not get on with Edward IV's best friend, William Hastings, because Edward and William like to go having affairs. Not with each other, with other
Thanks
women.
For clarifying.
Yeah, but they would just sort of go around egging each other on.
There's no Lannister hijinks.
No. It's just sort of more like, that's a woman. Go on, Ed. Go on, your grace. And then Ed returns the favour and is like, yes, William Hastings, go have an affair. Yippee!
That's going to work out well.
Yeah. Queen Elizabeth does not like Hastings. Hastings does not like the Queen, or does not trust the Queen to protect him, or be nice to him, or any of the Woodvilles. No one. Gloucester, as the King's brother, feels he's got more rights to power than the Woodvilles, because again, blood things. Gloucester is of a higher pedigree than the Woodvilles.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to, that nobility. The, entitlement, really. So you've got Gloucester up north, because he'd been made the leader of the north, effectively, because he married Warwick's other daughter, Anne, inherited all of the Neville northern estates, became incredibly powerful in the north, which was partly why he was entrusted to invade Scotland, because it mattered to him.
Yeah, I guess being up north, being a northerner, you'd want to invade Scotland.
It's better off asking a northerner to invade Scotland than like someone from Devon.
Yeah.
Because they've got more impetus to do it well. So factions, anyway. Once news of the king's death reaches Ludlow on the Welsh borders, which is where Edward V and the Earl Rivers are. Rivers are, whatever. They set off from Ludlow to go down to London and claim the throne for Edward V. Now, Hastings is in London, and he doesn't trust the fact that Edward V is on his way with Woodvilles. So he writes to Gloucester up north, tells him what's happened, and tells him that he needs to get to London ASAP before the Woodvilles can, push them both aside, essentially. And he does. He races down south, and he meets Edward V and Earl Rivers at Stony Stratford. He is prompt to arrest the Woodvilles and take possession of Edward V for himself.
That is a big escalation. Arresting the Woodvilles.
He's quick on it. And news of this arrest gets back to London, to the Queen, who then goes into sanctuary with the rest of the kids, including Richard, the younger brother of Edward V, and they're hiding in sanctuary when Gloucester and Edward V arrive. Things have to start moving quick. Gloucester's on limited time, so he chucks Ed V, in the Tower of London for a bit and says, because it was also just a royal residence, not just a prison. So he's like, we can stay there until I've got your coronation sorted and everything's smoothed out with the rest of the Woodvilles. He says as he executes the Woodvilles that he arrested.
Yeah, that's sorting everything.
Yeah, he also executed the Queen's second son by her first husband, Richard Grey, so Edward V's half-brother. So he's gone as well now.
Well, they really are dropping like flies, aren't they?
Yeah, it's not long either until Gloucester goes even more crazy, arrests Hastings and executes him.
Wow, the ultimate Uno reverse.
Yes, he's going wild. And then he goes up to Sanctuary, where Queen Elizabeth and the kids are hiding, and says, give me Prince Richard, Duke Richard, the little brother, 10-year-old boy, and I'll take him to the Tower and he can be with Edward V and they can keep each other company. Elizabeth agrees, but she doesn't exactly have a choice.
Right.
There's an army surrounding her. He's not technically violating Sanctuary, but there's nothing she can do but comply. So yeah, Richard of York is put in the Tower as well, and now we've got Richard of Gloucester's protectorate beginning. Now there's just one problem. Edward V has been raised by the Woodvilles. He's half Woodville. In 6 years' time, might there be a problem when he takes power and his regent has killed a lot of Woodvilles?
No, I don't see that being a problem at all.
No, he gets over it.
Oh, yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. He mans up,
He mans
so
up.
what if half his family's dead?
It's fine, he gets over it.
Yeah, just another Tuesday in medieval England, come on.
It's only your uncle, it's only your half-brother.
Exactly.
You'll survive.
Yeah.
No.
Nah.
No. Things go different. Gloucester realises he's gone too far.
It's a bit late now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's not so much, perhaps not regret, but more, there's only one thing for it. In for a penny, in for a pound. He finds a priest, Robert Stillington, who apparently has just remembered that he married Edward IV to another woman before he married Elizabeth Woodville.
He just suddenly remembered one day.
And he's like, oh, yeah, that's crazy. I remember this day a few years ago, before 1464, where I married the king to this woman, Eleanor, who is now dead and can't tell me that I'm wrong.
What a coincidence.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Handy that, innit?
Yeah.
So, all of a sudden, Edward IV's kids by Elizabeth Woodville are illegitimate because bigamy, Catholic country, no.
Oh.
So they're all illegitimate. The rightful king, if he wasn't dead, would be George, as Edward IV's oldest younger brother. He's dead. Then it would be Edward, Earl of Warwick. He's attainted. He doesn't have a claim. Who's left? Richard, Duke of Gloucester.
Well, this didn't come back to bite the Yorkists in the arse at all.
All of us, just with this one move, suddenly Gloucester is the king. And he's accepted as King Richard III. Uh-oh.
That is
yes.
not good.
Yes. He also, he ends up putting the Earl of Warwick in the Tower as well. Because, also, if it wasn't for that nasty act of attainder, he would be the king as well. So, problems ensue.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that should be king, and now it's Richard III. He is accepted as king by, Parliament and stuff. They all sort of agree to it, in fact. It's not a massive, they agree. But the princes, they could have still lived a decent life, They were still the children of a king.
Yeah.
Bastards of kings have still done very well for themselves in the past. They could have lived a good life. And the people
emphasis on could have.
Yeah, the people around the tower, when they're first put in there, they see them playing fairly regularly. And slowly but surely they start seeing them less and less until they just disappear and are never seen again.
Vanish like that.
Yeah. And no one knows for sure what happened. People from the Tudors have different stories. They got a couple of guys with whack-ass names, but we'll get to them shortly. But what is known is that under the Stuarts, I think is it James the First? I think a Stuart, and I want to say James the First.
The very first Stuart King of England.
Yeah. He was renovating the tower, I believe, and the builders uncovered 2 young skeletons that would fit boys of ages 12 and 10. Make of that what you will.
Wow, that's definitely not depressing.
Yeah. And we'll never know for sure.
No.
Because we have the bones. If we wanted to, we could DNA test them, because there are Yorkist descendants around today. Like George has descendants in Australian businessmen.
Yeah. First guess for a descendant of royalty.
Yes. Yeah, they've got back to Australia. Yeah. They did it first. Edward IV had early access to Australia, and he sent George there instead. The first prisoner to go.
The first prisoner was royalty, and then his descendant's going to return, and we're going to have an Australian king.
Yeah, King Simon. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Reverse colonisation.
I think it was him. I think they tested his DNA. Or was it him or one of their sisters? It was either Simon or a descendant of Anne of York, Edward IV's older sister.
Right.
Which is how they tested Richard III's bones and found out that it was him. So we've used DNA testing to find them before.
So we've confirmed that connection then?
Yeah, so we can scientifically test if the skeletons are the princes. We can see if they have Yorkist DNA.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Charles III has taken a stance on it, but Elizabeth II was saying, no, these are dead children, let them rest, essentially.
Which is a fair enough position to have, I think.
Yeah, I think it's valid. Ultimately, either way, the princes were gone. Whether they died, whether those skeletons are them, or if they escaped and came back, one way or another, they died and weren't king. Yeah.
Quite a sad fate.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think it is. Also, if you look at how people were acting back then, I think, Richard III probably had them killed.
Probably, I doubt he'd let them live.
Yeah, and also
dangerous, I guess.
Yeah, and there are other theories about who might have done. But given that after they disappeared, the knights and lords who'd been friends of Edward IV and his loyal supporters started very quickly abandoning him.
Right, which you're not going to do unless that person has done something particularly controversial.
Yeah, after just accepting him as king.
Yeah.
Something has to have happened between June and August.
Yeah.
And maybe some guys died. But yeah, Richard is faced with rebellion almost immediately, including a fairly big one from the Duke of Buckingham, who had supported Richard's go for the throne. And there was a theory that Buckingham had been the one that killed the princes. Again, we'll never know. But either way, he started rebelling in 1483, probably to take the crown for himself, because he was another descendant of Edward III through his 5th son.
Right.
So at this point, it's just if you've got a drop of royal blood, you might as well toss your hat in the ring.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Free for all at this stage.
Yeah. If you've got a ducal title, you've got the wealth, you've got a bit of royal blood. Everyone seems angry at Richard III. Why not? Might as well go for it.
Yeah. What's to lose?
Yeah. Well, Buckingham does lose, and he dies.
You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah. So that fails. That was the biggest rebellion against Richard III. That failed, but he was faced with a lot of rebellions pretty much consistently. He did a few things while being king. He appointed his nephew John de la Pole, Earl of Lincoln, to govern the north on his behalf. Now, again, we'll never know for sure, but after Richard's own son died in 1484, we think that he wanted John de la Pole to succeed him, and he started lumping extra honours on him, like saying, go govern all my estates in the north while I'm busy in London. And he becomes very powerful. It would look like that was what he would want to happen. We don't know. But in appointing John de la Pole to be the head of the north, Richard annoys the Earl of Northumberland, who was once a Lancastrian family. Now it's back to being Yorkist.
Right.
So now the Northumberland is a Yorkist guy who was getting on fairly well with Richard III until that, and thought, I am the most powerful Earl in the north, I deserve to govern the north. Not this guy from Lincolnshire.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
A guy from Lincolnshire. Oh, God.
Proper northerner.
Yeah.
Northumberland.
Not someone from the fucking Midlands.
Yeah. Icky.
Grim.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Just talking about John for a bit. At the same time, Henry Tudor rears his head again in Brittany. And
he's back.
As things start to go terribly wrong for the House of York, people start looking to the Lancastrians, and they start saying, we don't have any Lancastrians, have a look at Henry Tudor instead. And their mothers begin to scheme together, Margaret Beaufort and Elizabeth Woodville. Wait, hold on. Yeah, I've spoiled that bit there.
Oh, no.
I said that wrong.
Damn it.
Elizabeth Woodville and Margaret Beaufort start typing to each other, start emailing each other.
Yeah. Just whip out the typewriter, 15th century typewriter and get on it. Yeah.
Get on the fax machine.
Yeah.
No, they start sending letters to each other, and they start coming up with ideas. And there is an idea that Henry could marry Elizabeth's oldest daughter, Elizabeth of York, and unite the Lancastrian and Yorkist claims through them, and be king and queen. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe. Margaret Beaufort was a very loving mother. Like, really. Henry Tudor was all she had, really.
Yeah.
And he lived in France, away from her for several years.
Yeah.
So she spent pretty much all of Edward IV's second reign just trying to get him back in England. Like, she married her third husband, Thomas Stanley, on the sole basis that he was high up in Edward's court, and she wanted to have an ear in court to get up to the king and be like, can you bring my son home? I promise he'll be loyal. He's not got that much of a claim. We can just let him have my estates and his father's estates, and he can serve you loyally. I think Edward IV was vaguely receptive of the idea towards 1483, but nothing was ever confirmed. So it's, who knows what would have happened if Edward had just lived a couple of months longer, maybe. Yeah. Maybe Henry Tudor could have come over and lived a happy life.
Be reunited with his mum.
Yeah.
So I think we found our Cersei Lannister loving her children.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think she's as nuts.
No.
She's just...
she's got the good traits of
Cersei.
But...
Yeah, she's very smart. She doesn't shoot herself in the foot like Cersei does.
Yep.
Yeah. She's got the Tywin bit of the Lannisters, not the Cersei bit, I'd say. So they're scheming, and eventually news gets over to France, to Henry Tudor, to find out about the scheming, and he agrees. He says, yes, if the Yorkist people will have me, I will gladly marry Elizabeth of York and be King of England. So by 1485, there is pretty much a mass exodus of Lancastrians and disaffected Yorkists who blame Richard III for killing the princes, who are all just flocking to the Tudors. And so in August 1485, Henry leaves France behind, and he sails to Wales, where the Tudors have their support base and their ancestry, and they start raising an army as they go through Wales. Richard III responds. He gets his army together, starts marching off to war with an army including men such as Thomas Stanley and the Earl of Northumberland.
Right.
Yeah. Now he's aware that Thomas Stanley is his opponent's stepdad. So
wow, that is going to end well.
Yeah, so Richard also kidnaps Thomas's son George and holds him hostage. And, if you do not fight, he gets to live. If you do fight against me, I will kill your son. He has no such, he's got nothing in place for Northumberland, because he doesn't realise there's a problem there, and that he doesn't realise Northumberland isn't happy. Anyway, 22nd of August 1485, a little bit outside Leicester, Bosworth. The Battle of Bosworth.
The Battle of Bosworth.
Battle. This is it.
We finally reached this point.
We're finally there. It's only taken us a few episodes.
But we are finally here, ladies and gentlemen.
We've all heard the tale. Richard III has a bigger army. Considerably bigger. I think it's something like 25,000 to 15,000.
That's quite a disparity in numbers.
He's got a fair margin.
Yeah.
It should be a good victory for him. He does not realise Northumberland is not happy. Northumberland does not put his army in. So that's some of the men gone anyway.
And how many men does Northumberland have?
How many does he have? That's a good question. I can't remember. I've forgotten my numbers. I'm on Google. Northumberland brought about 4,000 men.
Okay, so
we're down to 15,000 against 21,000. So the odds are still in Richard's favour, but it's less so. And Thomas Stanley had. Let me just change my search query a little bit. How many men did Thomas Stanley take to Bosworth? Yeah, that would do it. He brought about 6,000 men.
Right,
so now on level pegging.
That's almost half of his entire force.
We're now 15 for 15.
Just MIA, basically. Wow.
Just chilling and watching.
Yeah.
So it's all, we've gone from having a 10,000 man majority to level pegging. Eesh.
Yeah, not great for Richard.
Yeah, at first it's level pegging, but then Thomas Stanley does join in, but not for Richard.
Oh.
So now the odds have shifted completely against Richard. All of a sudden, he's now on 15,000 and Henry's on 21,000.
Well, that escalated quickly.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Northumberland's just sat there watching.
He's just busting the popcorn out.
Yeah, he's just okay. Well, that's a plot twist.
Yeah.
George Stanley survives, so even the hostage shaking had no effect.
Good job, Richard.
Yes.
You really came out well here, didn't
you? And, you've got the classic tale. Richard tries a cavalry charge on his own. Well, not on his own, but he tries to lead one.
It's just him on his horse.
Yeah.
Sword raised, charging towards 20,000 men.
Directly towards Henry himself with his cavalrymen. Henry's standard bearer, William Brandon, saves Henry's life. He, jumps in the way of a spear or something and takes it for Henry. The standard falls. At first, the people think that means Henry is dead because, medieval battles are messy.
Yeah.
If a standard falls,
then one can assume that your leader is dead.
Yes, but he's not dead. Someone else raises it and okay, second wind, let's do this. And the Tudors win. At some point, Richard III dies, and Thomas Stanley himself comes in, finds Richard III's corpse, takes the body, the crown even, off his head, and pops it on Henry Tudor's head.
How poetic.
Yes. It was Thomas Stanley's men that shifted the balance, and it's Thomas Stanley that puts the crown on Henry's head. King Henry VII, the start of the House of Tudor.
What a saga.
What a crazy tale. Because it is kind of wild. His granddad was just an obscure Welsh knight who happened to have Riz and managed to bag Henry V's widow, who was also the daughter of the King of France. And then that just happened to make his children half-brothers to the King of England.
You know what?
It's a wild story.
Welsh top shagger, what can we say?
Yeah. Owen Tudor.
What a guy. What a dude. saving the day.
The most impactful Welsh knight on English history. It is a crazy story, the Tudor story.
Yeah.
It's wild. And all the way back, they were like descendants of the Chamberlains of the last independent rulers of Wales as well.
Wow.
It's crazy. Wild story. Now Henry, as Henry VII, he's going to get off to a reasonable-ish start. He needs to be quick on things to secure his position.
I can't imagine the situation right now is particularly great for him.
Yeah, and you've got European chroniclers saying the King of England is an unknown Welshman. So there's very few people in the continent who are thinking, this checks out, this makes sense. So he marries Elizabeth of York quickly, but after his coronation, so that no one can say that he's only been crowned because he's married her. He's done it the right way around. He's become king and then he's married her.
Yeah.
So it's, right of conquest, not right of wife.
Yeah.
He, lets a few Yorkists off the hook if they're nice. John de la Pole, he's allowed to chill as Earl of Lincoln and heir to the Duke of Suffolk. He keeps the Earl of Warwick in the Tower. But things are still shaky for him in general. Yeah. And you've got a guy called Lambert Simnel, who claims to be the Earl of Warwick at some point, and is even crowned Edward VI in Dublin because
a pretender.
Because Ireland was very pro-Yorkist. So they had this pretender. They crowned him king. John de la Pole joined them. So he was going for it. Chances are that it was a fake coronation and that John de la Pole was just going to depose Henry and take the throne for himself. And the Earl of Warwick was just... Well, the Earl of Warwick, this guy Lambert, was just a handy figurehead. Battle of Stoke, 1487. Last battle of the Wars of the Roses. Tudor victory again. De la Pole dead. Lambert Simnel is a boy, is captured and given a job in Henry's kitchens.
You know what? Given the time, I think that's a fairly decent end.
Yeah, because he wanted to be like harsh but fair. He's a 12-year-old lad. He's probably not had much say in the rebellion. I've executed the actual leaders. Let's give the boy a job. And, I think he might have become a falconer as well in the royal household. No. So he did okay for himself, to be fair.
Not too bad.
Lambert Simnel could have gone worse for him.
Yeah.
Much worse.
Much worse than what we've seen, Yeah.
There was another pretender as well, Perkin Warbeck, who said he was Richard, Duke of York, Edward V's little brother. He just sort of spent the best part of a decade travelling Europe, meeting kings, and being like, can I have support? And like, well, yeah, but it's not going to amount to much. And in 1497 he was captured. So it took a while for Henry to be secure. But, he did. The Tudor dynasty survives
as we know.
For now.
Yeah.
He marries Elizabeth of York. They have kids. You've got Prince Arthur at first, born in 1486. Named after King Arthur. Mm-hmm. Welsh.
Yep, naturally.
Emphasising the Welshness ancestry. And also, we're unifying England with this mythical name. They have another son, Henry. They have a few other kids. Eventually Arthur dies, making Henry the heir to the throne. But that's another tale.
Well, that's another tale for another time.
Yes. So this Henry would be what? Elizabeth of York's son, so Edward IV's grandson. Wasn't William Parr's granddaughter involved in Edward IV's grandson?
Good question.
But that's a tale for another day. And that concludes the Wars of the Roses. We've got the Tudors.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the War of the Roses.
So this is vaguely related, but also not really. When I went to see the Lancashire Hot Pots, the support in York, the supporter was like, "Oh, we're in Yorkshire, hey, who won the Wars of the Roses? Hey, Lancaster." And I was like, "Did we? I don't actually know." I was thinking, to be honest, Wales won.
Wales
won the war between Yorkshire and Lancashire.
Lancashire, Yorkshire, did the North win? No. It was Wales all along.
It was Wales.
You know what, maybe Wales is the true superpower within the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Never mind England, never mind Scotland or
Northern
Ireland.
It's the most originally British.
Yeah.
Because, that's where all the all the Celts went when the
Celtic
when the
Britons,
Anglo-Saxons came over.
Yeah.
So it is the most pure English. Well, it's not English, but you know what I mean.
British. Yeah.
It's the most. It's the most native.
Yeah. Hear that, Anglo-Saxons?
Yeah.
Get out.
Yes. Lanfair Pringwingilio Grogogoch.
Agreed.
The Welsh place, the long
Welsh
place. Anyway, now we're waffling. We're just talking about Wales.
Yeah.
That's it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening over these last 3 episodes as we have given a very detailed account of the Wars of the Roses and all of its intricacies and hijinks. And I would like to thank Danny as well for joining me on this podcast series. And without further ado, thank you for listening. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed, and drop a comment. And I've been Iravic. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. And Danny, do you want to finish us out?
Yes, I would say thank you to Iravic for giving me a platform to waffle about something I'm worryingly passionate about. Yes, I have been Danny. I will continue to be Danny.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. See you later, folks.
Farewell.
Goodbye.
Clong. I love that.